If a newborn baby were not selfish, it would struggle to survive. This isn't a judgment. It's a fundamental truth of our biology. Anyone who has held a small child in the dead of night knows this reality in their bones. When a baby is hungry, or uncomfortable, or sick, it cries. It wails with a purity and an insistence that commands the entire world to pay attention. It does not pause to consider if you are tired. It does not care that it is 3 in the morning and you have to work in a few hours. It is, in that moment, the absolute center of its own universe, driven by a single powerful imperative: get my needs met. It is a perfect, unfiltered expression of the will to live. This isn't malice, it's the engine of life itself. And as this child grows, this engine continues to run. Before they can speak, before they can even walk, a toddler who sees you eating a piece of fruit will reach for it. They will grab, insist, and protest if denied. They have not yet been shaped by the complex rules of society, by the lessons of sharing and politeness. They are operating on a more ancient code, a biological script written into every cell of their being. A script that whispers constantly, survive, continue, propagate. This script is the legacy of what we might call the selfish gene. Imagine, for a moment, that your deepest nature, the very core of what it means to be human, is like a single, wild seed cast into the soil of existence. This seed doesn't have grand ambitions or moral considerations. It has one program: to sprout, to reach for the light, to draw water and nutrients from the earth, and to grow. Its entire existence is an act of what we would call profound self-interest. It must outcompete the weeds around it for sunlight. It must push its roots deeper than others to find water. This isn't because the seed is bad or evil. It's because the seeds that didn't do this, the ones that were polite and waited their turn, simply didn't survive. Their genetic code vanished. We are the descendants of the successful seeds, the ones whose core programming was relentlessly, beautifully effective at ensuring its own survival. From the grand perspective of evolutionary theory, this makes perfect sense. If our ancestors had not been fundamentally selfish, had they not prioritized their own survival and the survival of their immediate kin, we would not be here. In the brutal competition of the natural world, the altruistic ape who shared its last piece of fruit with a stranger from another tribe, rather than its own hungry child, would have watched its genetic line fade into oblivion. We, Homo sapiens, stand at the pinnacle of the known natural world precisely because this selfish gene within each of us was a decisive, non-negotiable factor in our enduring success. It is the invisible architect of our existence. But here is the paradox that confuses and pains so many of us. We look around at human civilization and we see something else entirely. We see sacrifice. We see kindness to strangers. We see acts of profound compassion, empathy, and selflessness. We build hospitals for the sick. We donate to causes halfway across the world. We risk our lives for ideals. How can we reconcile this with the raw, self-serving nature of that wild seed? Does this mean our selfish gene has been weakened or erased? The truth is far more intricate and, ultimately, more hopeful. The selfish gene has not disappeared. It has simply become more sophisticated. It has learned to play the long game. Under the guidance of civilization and the development of our complex brains, this fundamental drive for self-preservation has learned that the best way to ensure its own survival is often through cooperation, community, and what appears to be selflessness. The people we admire for their goodness are not people who lack a selfish gene. They are people who have learned to channel that powerful, primal energy in the most enlightened ways. If this idea of seeing our own nature not as a flaw to be overcome, but as a fundamental blueprint to be understood and guided, is already sparking a new perspective for you, take a moment to subscribe to Mind Decode Explained. We journey through these intricate landscapes of the mind together every week, seeking not to judge, but to understand. Our shared exploration is, in itself, an act of enlightened cooperation, helping each other navigate the beautiful complexity of being human. So let's be clear about what this selfishness really means. It doesn't necessarily mean greed or cruelty. In the context of our biology, selfishness simply means that an entity, whether it's a single gene or a whole organism, will act in a way that increases its own chances of survival and replication. As the scientist Richard Dawkins so brilliantly articulated in his landmark book, The Selfish Gene, the fundamental unit of selection, the true protagonist in the story of evolution, isn't the species, nor is it the individual. It's the gene. We are its survival machines. Our bodies, our minds, our emotions, they are all exquisitely crafted vehicles that genes have built to protect themselves and to ferry themselves into the next generation. Think back to our wild seed. The seed's ultimate purpose isn't to create a beautiful flower or a mighty tree for the world to admire. That is merely a side effect. The seed's biological purpose is to successfully replicate the genetic information it carries. The plant is the gene's strategy for doing so. A bee comes to the flower, and we see a beautiful act of pollination. But from the gene's perspective, it has cleverly constructed a machine, the flower, that uses another machine, the bee, to create copies of itself. This isn't a conscious, plotting intelligence. It is the result of billions of years of trial and error, a process that automatically favors what works. This lens allows us to solve some of the most profound riddles of human behavior, especially within the family. Why do parents love their own children with an intensity that surpasses their love for other children? Why does a mother's love feel so unconditional and absolute? From the gene's perspective, this is not a mystery. A child is a direct vessel, carrying 50% of each parent's genetic code into the future. The overwhelming, all-consuming love a parent feels is the emotional manifestation of the gene's most crucial survival strategy. It is the powerful, internal guarantee that this new vehicle, this precious carrier of the family's genes, will be protected at all costs. The gene acts selfishly by creating a psychological state in the parent profound love that ensures the survival of its copies. A parent who sacrifices for their child is not defying the selfish gene. They are obeying its deepest command. This also helps us understand the more transactional aspects of family life that we often feel uncomfortable acknowledging. Why do parents often treat their children better than they treat their own aging parents? Evolutionarily, the calculus is cold but clear. A child represents future genetic propagation, while an elderly parent represents the past. Resources, from a purely biological standpoint, are better invested forward. Of course, human civilization has layered morality, duty, and love onto this dynamic, but the underlying pull is still there. And what about the common parental refrain? You must study hard to bring honor to our family. Or the cultural expectation, more pronounced in some societies than others, of raising children to care for you in old age? This is where the selfish gene strategy expands beyond simple kin selection into the realm of reciprocal altruism and social reputation. In the complex world of human society, our survival depends on more than just our immediate family. It depends on our status within a group, our reputation, and our network of allies. A child who becomes successful and brings honor to the family elevates the status of that entire genetic line. They become a more attractive mate, their siblings benefit from the association, and the family's overall chances of thriving increase. It is a collective investment. Similarly, the expectation that children will care for their parents in old age is a form of reciprocal altruism with a long delay. I will invest all my energy in you now, ensuring the survival of my genes. In return, the social contract, reinforced by emotion and culture, dictates that you will care for me later, ensuring my individual survival long enough to perhaps help with my grandchildren, further securing the genetic line. At the root of all these relationships, as uncomfortable as it may be to admit, is a form of value exchange. But we must be very careful with the word value. It is not just about money or material resources. Value is also psychological. It is emotional. It is spiritual. When a parent raises a child, the return they receive is not just a potential caregiver in old age. They receive responsive love. They receive a sense of purpose, of legacy. They see their own features, their own personality, their own hopes reflected in another being. For the human psyche, these are some of the most valuable and meaningful rewards imaginable. They are the emotional salary paid to us by our genes for doing the hard work of raising the next generation. This brings us to a crucial liberating insight. The benefit that our selfish nature seeks is not always what we think it is. We have a common misconception that selfishness is always materialistic. We picture a greedy tycoon, a cutthroat competitor. But the selfish drive is far more subtle and pervasive. When you choose to spend an evening with a friend who makes you laugh, you are being selfish. You are seeking the psychological benefit of joy and connection. When you volunteer for a cause you believe in, you are being selfish. You are seeking the powerful emotional reward of acting in alignment with your values, the feeling of purpose that psychologists like Martin Seligman identify as a cornerstone of well-being. Even the monk who dedicates his life to meditation in a secluded monastery is, in a sense, acting selfishly. He is seeking a state of inner peace, of enlightenment, a profound psychological benefit. The core mechanism is this: you are doing it because it satisfies a need within you. It might be a need for joy, for meaning, for connection, or for peace. But you are the one receiving the internal, emotional, or spiritual payoff. If an action brought you nothing but authentic, deep-seated misery, you would be highly unlikely to do it willingly. Brené Brown's research on vulnerability touches upon this. We connect with others not out of pure, selfless charity, but because we are wired with a need for belonging. We are selfishly seeking connection to soothe a fundamental human anxiety. The beauty is that this selfish act of seeking connection is the very thing that builds compassionate communities. This reframes the entire debate. The question is not, how can I eliminate my selfishness? The question is, what is the most intelligent, expansive, and fulfilling way to be selfish? Let's return to our metaphor of the wild seed. For a while, it grows alone, fighting for its own survival. But as it grows into a sapling, it becomes part of a larger ecosystem. It enters a forest. Now, a new, more complex set of strategies becomes available. The sapling might discover that by growing close to a taller, older tree, it is protected from the harshest winds. It might find that its roots can tap into a vast underground network of fungi, a wood wide web, where trees exchange nutrients and information. The sapling gives some of its sugars from photosynthesis to the fungi, and in return the fungi give it essential minerals from the soil that it couldn't get on its own. Is the tree being selfish or altruistic? It's being smart. It has learned that its own health and survival are intrinsically linked to the health and survival of the system around it. This is the foundation of human society. We are not just individual seeds, we are a forest. Early in our evolution, we discovered that a group of humans working together could hunt a mammoth that no single human could. They could defend against predators more effectively. They could share childcare. The individual who cooperated, who shared their food with the expectation of receiving food in return tomorrow, was more likely to survive and pass on their genes than the individual who hoarded everything for themselves and was cast out of the group. This is reciprocal altruism, the "I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine" principle. But our large brains added another layer: reputation. In a close-knit group, it becomes important not just to be a cooperator, but to be known as a cooperator. A reputation for generosity, fairness, and reliability becomes an immense asset. It attracts more partners, more allies, and more support in times of need. Therefore, the selfish gene, in its quest for survival, gives rise to a brain that values fairness, that feels guilt when it cheats, and that feels a warm glow when it acts generously. These moral emotions are not some magical force that defies biology. They are the biological tools that make sophisticated social cooperation possible. This dismantles the common misconception that being biologically selfish gives us a license to be cruel or exploitative. In fact, it suggests the opposite. The most successful survival strategy for a highly social creature like a human is to build a reputation for trustworthiness and kindness. In the long run, the cheater, the liar, the exploiter gets found out. They are ostracized. Their short-term gain strategy leads to long-term failure. The most selfish thing you can do, in the most intelligent sense of the word, is to be a genuinely good and reliable person, because that is what creates the strongest, most resilient social network for your own long-term well-being. So, where does that leave us? It leaves us with a sense of awe for the complexity of our own nature. We are not fallen angels, nor are we demonic beasts. We are creatures of evolution, carrying an ancient, powerful drive for survival that we experience as self-interest. This drive is the engine. It is the raw power. But we are also endowed with a conscious mind, a capacity for reason, empathy, and foresight. We are not just the seed. We have become the gardener. We can look at our own innate tendencies, our desire for status, our pull towards our family, our need for belonging, our craving for joy and meaning, and we can understand where they come from. We can see them not as sins or flaws, but as the raw material of our humanity. And with that understanding comes power, the power of choice. You are not a slave to your genes. Your consciousness is perhaps the most remarkable thing that evolution has yet produced. It allows you to question your own programming. You can feel a flash of anger and choose not to act on it. You can feel a pull of greed and choose to be generous. You can recognize your bias towards your own tribe and consciously choose to extend your circle of compassion to include strangers. This isn't about fighting your nature. It's about guiding it. It's about taking that raw, powerful engine of self-interest and deciding where to point it. You can point it towards the narrow acquisition of wealth and status, and you may find a certain kind of success. Or you can point it towards building deep relationships, contributing to a community you care about, creating work that gives you meaning, and practicing kindness. And you may find that this enlightened selfishness yields a far richer reward, a life of fulfillment, connection, and profound well-being. The paradox is that the most deeply satisfying life is often one dedicated to the well-being of others, because the psychological rewards we get from that are the most valuable benefits our selfish brain can receive. The journey of understanding the selfish gene is not a descent into cynicism. It is an ascent into self-awareness. It frees you from the guilt of having needs and desires. It allows you to look at the behavior of others not with quick judgment, but with a deeper, more compassionate understanding of the hidden forces at play. You see the parent doting on their child, and you see the beautiful machinery of love and legacy. You see friends supporting each other, and you see the intelligent dance of reciprocity that holds societies together. You see someone act with kindness, and you recognize that you are witnessing one of the most successful survival strategies ever devised. Our wild seed has grown over millions of years into a magnificent tree in a vast, interconnected forest. It still competes for light, yes, but it also supports the ecosystem that sustains it. It provides shelter for others. It enriches the soil from which it grew. Its own survival and the health of the forest have become one and the same. So, the next time you feel that pull of self-interest, that quiet inner voice asking, "What's in it for me?" do not be ashamed. Acknowledge it. It is the sound of the engine of life humming within you. But then, use your conscious, compassionate mind your gardener's hand to ask a better question: what is the wisest and kindest way to meet this need? How can my drive to thrive also help others thrive? In answering that question, you are not denying your nature. You are fulfilling its most extraordinary potential. You are honoring the journey of that single, selfish seed and helping it become part of a forest that can touch the sky.